Have you ever been on the bus and had to listen to someone's phone conversation?
Most of the time.
有冇試過咧坐巴士咧就有啲人講電話講得好大聲就唔聽？
喂，阿媽。
Hello mom.
唔返嚟食飯啦。
I'm not coming home for dinner tonight.
小強揾我打波啊。
Little Ken asked me to go play some ball with him.
And by the end of the bus ride, about the only thing you don't know about the person is a small part of their genetic code.
咁個電話一路係咁傾咯喎，咁咧發覺咧原來你已經聽到好多關於呢個人嘅嘢，可能咧淨係單佢 DNA 你唔識，你唔係幾知嘅啫。
On the other hand, some phone calls are quite the opposite if you happen to be eavesdropping.
咁咧，但係有另外一啲嘅電話嘅對白咧，就可能完全唔同。咁即係就算可能你豎起隻耳聽咧，都唔同嘅。
Hello. Hi.
淨係聽到呢啲啫 ，hi 啊。
Okay. Maybe.
可能啦，係啦。
Yeah. All right. See you later.
係先啦。
What was that all about?
就係咁多啦，聽到都係咁多啦。
And reading one of the letters in the Bible is like listening to one side of a telephone conversation.
咁咧有陣時咧，我哋睇聖經嘅時候咧，有啲情況咧就好似咧，我哋咧就聽到人哋電話嘅對白，但係淨係聽到單方面嘅啫。
Those are especially the letters in the New Testament.
咁咧嗰啲咧就會係當我哋睇到因為咧我哋讀新約嘅時候都係書信嚟嘅，咁書信咧係一方面寫返另外一方面，咁我哋好似聽到一啲單方面嘅一啲對答咁樣。
And sometimes it's really easy to understand what the other person, the reader was thinking or saying, and sometimes it's not so easy.
咁有陣時咧，我哋可能咧就會比較容易咧估計到讀者咧去讀呢封信嘅人。佢會有咩回應，有咩諗法，但係有陣時咧，亦都未必咁容易估到嘅。
And in Hebrews, in chapter 7, as we start to look at it, it's pretty easy, I think, to understand what the writer was talking about.
咁咧喺希伯來書第7章咧，我覺得咧就其實呢個情況似乎應該都幾容易去明白。即係對方係點樣諗法嘅。
And probably easy to know what the person on the other end of the line was saying.
咁甚至乎咧，估計到咧，就雖然我哋睇到單方面嘅書信，但係可能估計到接書信嘅人讀者會係點樣諗法。
So probably the person, remember the readers are Jewish Christians. That's why the book is called Hebrews. They're the Jewish Christians, and they've accepted Jesus as Son of God, as their Savior, as their God.
咁咧，我哋咧可能咧就要大前提咧要明白咧，呢封信希伯來書嘅讀者咧就係一啲猶太人嘅基督徒，咁所以點解呢封信係叫做希伯來書就係咁解。
And so this is a huge step for them to accept that Jesus is the Son of God. Anyway, this is an enormous thing. They've done that. They've put their faith in Jesus.
咁呢一班咁嘅信徒咧，佢哋咧係相信主耶穌佢係神嘅兒子，佢已經係有呢一個信心㗎啦。
And now someone is telling them, you know, Jesus that you believe in is also a priest. More than that, he is a high priest.
咁但係喺呢封信裏邊咧，嗰個作者咧就同呢一班希伯來嘅信徒話：，你哋所信嘅主耶穌係神嘅兒子，唔單止咁樣喎，主耶穌佢係祭司，而且係大祭司。
And on the other end of the line, I can imagine that the person is saying, "Wait a minute, wait a minute."
咁可能咧啲讀者一睇到嘅時候就即刻等等先。
Everyone knows that priests come from the tribe of Levi. Jesus is from the tribe of Judah. That doesn't sound right.
咁可能咧喺佢呢啲希伯來嘅信徒裏邊咧，佢第一個概念就係 祭司係從利未支派而出㗎嘛，咁但係主耶穌嘅肉身支派係猶大，似乎唔多啱喎。
Now here's where we start to hear the answer. And let's read in chapter 7 the answer to this objection.
咁咧，當我哋去讀呢個希伯來書嘅時候咧，我哋發覺咧，可能咧就係個作者咧點樣去回應呢啲咁樣嘅反對嘅聲音啊。
So at Hebrews chapter 7 verse 1.
希伯來書7章1節。
Well, and just at the end well, let's go back one verse. At the end of chapter 6, Jesus, who went before us, has entered on our behalf. He, Jesus, has become a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek.
咁我哋稍為睇一睇翻之前嗰句經文咧，第6章第17節，作先鋒的耶穌，既照着麥基洗德的等次，成了永遠的大祭司。
Chapter 7, verse 1. This Melchizedek was king of Salem and priest of God Most High.
7章1節，這麥基洗德就是撒冷王，又是至高神的祭司。
Salem, does that sound familiar? Does that sound like Jerusalem? Jerusalem?
咁我聽到呢個和合本嘅譯本咧就用撒冷王，咁撒冷呢個字我哋會唔會覺得個音好似耶路撒冷啊？
It was in fact the old name of the same place, Jerusalem.
咁其實咧佢真係耶路撒冷以前個名嚟嘅。
So this Melchizedek was king and priest. Oh, king and priest.
咁呢度其實就講呢一個麥基洗德，介紹到麥基洗德，佢係王，佢亦都係祭司。
He met Abraham coming from the defeat of the kings and blessed him, and Abraham gave him a tenth of everything.
當亞伯拉罕殺敗諸王回來的時候，就迎接他，給他祝福。亞伯拉罕也將自己所得來的取1/10給他。
Now, Hebrews is something of a history lesson.
咁咧希伯來書咧其實咧講好多猶太人嗰個歷史嘅。
And this is a reference to a great little account of something that happened to Abraham when he was still known as Abram.
咁咧呢件事情咧講翻咧，即係亞伯拉罕遇到麥基洗德呢件事情咧，就要講翻喺創世記咧，當亞伯拉罕依然未叫做亞伯拉罕，佢當時叫做亞伯蘭嘅時候咧，咁咧就發生呢個故事嘅。
And this is recorded back in Genesis chapter 12 or 14, I forget. 14. Genesis 14.
咁咧呢個事情咧就記載喺創世記嘅第14章。
And it's complicated. You have to read about 5 times before it's sort of, you kind of understand it.
咁咧，你如果要揭去咧，可能你一時之間咧會有一啲比較上好複雜咁嘅感覺嘅。
Abram had left, God had told Abraham to go, and he had gone.
咁咧就
left his home.
咁就事情咧就話上帝咧就叫亞伯蘭你離開你嘅家鄉啦，咁樣去啦，咁樣。
He got rich and he had lots of sheep and he had his relative Lot with him, and he got rich and they had too many sheep and they had to part ways. So Lot had already gone to live. Do you remember where Lot went to live? Sodom. So Lot had gone to live in Sodom. Abraham had gone his own way.
咁咧當時咧亞伯蘭咧就即係同佢個侄一齊羅德啦。咁佢哋慢慢咧就經過神嘅帶領啦，又得到上帝嘅祝福啦。咁佢哋咧越嚟越多咗佢哋嘅財產啊、牛羊啊咁樣起伏啊都多咗嘅。咁去到一個情況之下咧，佢哋需要咧就即係太多啦，大家太多要分開啦。咁就亞伯蘭就行一邊啦。咁啊羅德咧就選擇去咗所多瑪俄摩拉嗰邊嘅。
And the reason this little story is so complicated because there's so many different countries and kings involved.
咁點解咧就話可能我哋讀起上嚟會覺得都好似幾複雜，因為咧當時咧都有唔同嘅地方嘅嗰啲王啊、細王啊又可能有一啲嘅爭戰嘅，所以好似幾複雜。
So Abraham defeated some kings. From the time he defeated some kings, you have to go back 14 years. 14, yeah. From the time he defeated some kings, go back 14 years.
咁咧，如果我哋可能咧就要喺 亞伯拉罕咧，咁佢贏咗某啲王嘅時候，喺嗰個時間咧計算到退翻14年前。
One king had taken control of the areas of 4 other kings. 5. See, it's confusing. 5 other kings.
咁當時咧，即係倒去14年前咧，咁當時有一個王咧，佢咧就已經控制咗其他嗰5個王。
Okay, one king had taken control of 5, and that lasted for 12 years.
咁嗰個時段咧就係大概維持咗12年。
And these 5 got tired of it and revolted.
咁咧12年就控制到佢之後，但係之後又唔聽話啦，唔聽話佢哋又作反啦，作反係啦。
That lasted for 1 or 2 years.
咁變咗嗰段作反嗰段時間又1-2年啦。
This king got 3 other kings with him and went to war.
咁本嚟嗰個王咧，佢依家咧就有3個另外嘅王嚟幫佢，咁佢哋就打仗啦。
They went out and they conquered about 4 or 5 other places.
咁咧佢哋於是乎咧，佢就打贏仗啦，有幾笪地方俾佢攞咗啦。
Then these guys thought, I don't know what they thought. Maybe they thought, hey, they've been out at war and they're weak, and they said, let's go fight against this guy. And these 4, 5, getting mixed up, said, we're going to challenge these. So we have a situation of 4 kings here who have just defeated a few other countries, areas, and then 5 come up to challenge them. So we have 4 against 5.
咁之前咧有啲就唔聽話嗰度咧，可能又有幾個零星落索5個王啦，咁佢再次咧就嚟挑戰啦，向呢邊嗰四個王聯合嘅嚟挑戰啦，又打啦。
4 against 5 will win.
咁咧就可能係一邊咧就4個王，一邊5個王嘅。
They lost. They lost.
Which side lost?
The 5.
OK.
Yeah.
咁咧之前唔聽話嗰邊5個王嗰邊咧就輸咗啦。
One of these was the king of Sodom, where Lot lived.
咁輸咗裏邊咧，其中有一個就係所多瑪嘅王嚟嘅。
So when these 4 overran Sodom, they took Lot.
所以當呢贏咗嗰邊咧，贏咗嗰邊嗰4個王咧，佢贏埋所多瑪嗰笪地方，所以佢哋擄埋羅德。
And someone told Abram.
咁有人咧就將呢件事話咗俾亞伯蘭聽。
Abram took 318 of his trained men and went to rescue Lot.
咁咧亞伯蘭咧當時梗係帶埋佢嗰啲車馬嗰啲剩咧，咁去救羅德啦。
Now this does not sound like a good idea, right? These 4 kings Abram is now chasing have just defeated 9 or 10 other kings and countries.
咁咧嗱，因為點解聽落去其實就嗰個情況唔係咁好，因為嗱嗰邊已經打贏仗，連羅德都擄埋，幾個王都打敗咗，咁你亞伯蘭去到其實就未必咁即係睇得好啦。
But in Genesis it says at night, Abram divided up his men and he attacked and he won.
咁但係咧聖經記載咧就話亞伯蘭咧夜間嘅時候咧就將佢啲人馬咧就分配好咧，咁咧就去襲擊啦，咁啊贏咗嘅喎。
And there's a statement that says because God gave them the victory.
咁咧亦都有一句説話咧，聖經就話上帝咧將勝利咧嚟到交咗俾亞伯蘭。
And Abram rescued Lot.
咁既然勝利啦，咁亞伯蘭咧就救咗羅德啦。
And on his way back from the defeat of the kings, he met Melchizedek.
咁亦就喺呢個時間嘅時候咧，佢就打贏仗啦，咁翻返去屋企嗰度嘅時候咧，就遇上呢個麥基洗德啦。
Now let's pick up now in Hebrews chapter 7, verse 1. He met Abraham, returning from the defeat of the kings, and blessed him, and Abraham gave him a tenth of everything.
咁咧，我哋讀一讀大概第2節啦。即係麥基洗德當亞伯拉罕殺敗諸王回來嘅時候，就迎接他，給他祝福。
Now, first, his name means King of Righteousness.
咁首先咧，佢個名翻出來咧就係仁義王。
And also King of Salem
又
King
名
of Peace.
又名撒冷王，就係平安王嘅意思。
So this is describing this priest, Melchizedek, without father or mother, without genealogy.
咁麥基洗德咧係無父無母無祖，
without beginning of days or end of life, like excuse me, like the Son of God, he remains a priest forever.
無生之地無命之中，乃是神與神的兒子相似。
Okay. Excuse me. Let's keep reading in verse 4. Just think how great he was. Even the patriarch Abraham gave him a tenth of the plunder.
你們想一想，先祖亞伯拉罕將自己所擄來上等之物取1/10給他，人是何等尊貴呢？
It's great we have a translator. I can cough while she's translating. Abraham had just defeated kings, so he has plunder. He's gotten a lot of, what stuff you get when you defeat someone. You get their stuff.
咁我哋可以想像到咧，亞伯拉罕啱啱打完仗喎，咁從嗰啲打仗得來咧，佢有好多上等嘅老來之物啦。
This is a kind of income, right?
咁咧對佢嚟講係一種收入嚟嘅。
And for your income, what do? You're supposed to give, of course, as Hebrews or Jews, you give 10% tithe to God.
咁咧，如果我哋收到啲收入嘅話咧，對猶太人嚟講咧，咁佢哋守摩西律法噶嘛，咁佢要將1/10咧嚟到去奉獻俾上帝噶嘛。
Now, this is explained in verse 5. Now, the law requires the descendants of Levi, who become priests, to collect a tenth from the people, that is, their brothers, even though their brothers are descended from Abraham.
第5節，那得祭司職任的利未子孫，領命照例向百姓取1/10，這百姓是自己的弟兄，雖是從亞伯拉罕身中生的，還是照例取1/10。
The Levitical priests had a duty to collect 10% from the Jewish people.
咁咧嗰個例咧，即係律法咧就寫明咧，呢一個利未支派佢嘅子孫咧，佢哋咧係應得從其他嘅弟兄身上咧係取1/10作為佢哋嘅生活費嘅。
Before this law, however, was set up, Abraham had already done something like this. He'd given a tenth to a priest of God.
咁咧，亞伯拉罕啊，當然係喺摩西之前好耐啦。咁喺摩西定呢個律法之前咧，原來亞伯拉罕咧都曾經做過同樣嘅事情，將1/10咧去交上嘅。
Now, this man, Melchizedek, however, did not trace his descent from Levi, yet he collected a tenth from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises.
咁咧呢一個所講嘅呢一個麥基洗德咧，佢亦都絕對唔係從呢個利未支派而出，但係佢喺當時咧已經從亞伯拉罕所得到嘅嘢裏邊取1/10咯喎。
The Jewish people would have a hard time imagining giving a tithe to anyone but a priest from the tribe of Levi.
咁對猶太人嘅基督徒嚟講咧，佢哋可能咧比較難咧去明白到如果做1/10，梗係做俾利未支派嘅祭司啦，點可能會做俾其他嘅人呢？
But in their scriptures, in their own scriptures, there is an example of such a case.
咁但係如果呢啲猶太人佢咁熟聖經，佢睇翻創世記嘅時候，創世記裏邊係明明白白咁記載緊呢一件事情嘅。
Moreover, their patriarch Abraham was even blessed by that priest.
甚至乎咧佢哋嘅佢哋嘅祖先亞伯拉罕咧係受呢一個麥基洗德嘅祝福嘅。
Who's greater, Abraham or Melchizedek?
咁我哋咧就可能即刻會諗一諗，佢要祝福啊，祝福要講位份嘅喎，究竟邊個位份高啲啊？亞伯拉罕位份高啲，還是麥基洗德位份高啲咧？
Because in the Jewish religion, Abraham is right at the top, one of the greatest.
咁咧喺猶太人嚟講咧，哇，邊個會大得過我哋祖先亞伯拉罕啊？亞伯拉罕位即係邊個位份可以高得過亞伯拉罕㗎？
Verse 7, and without doubt, the lesser person is blessed by the greater.
第7節，從來位份大的給位份小的祝福，這是駁不倒的理。
So, Melchizedek is even greater than Abraham because Melchizedek blessed Abraham.
如果咁樣計法咧，就即是話聖經記載麥基洗德係位份高過亞伯拉罕啦，因為佢幫亞伯拉罕祝福啊嘛。
Now, another comparison in verse 7. In one case, the tenth, the tithe, is collected by men who die. But in the other case, by him who is declared to be living.
在這裏第8節，在這裏收1/10的都是必死的人，即係利未人、利未支派。但在那裏收1/10的，有為他作見證的，說他是活的。
So the first case is the case of the Levitical priests. They collect a tenth. They collected a tenth from the people, but they died. These are men who would die.
咁咧呢度講呢個第8節咧有講有兩個情況嘅人，第一個情況咧就係講緊利未支派嘅人，利未支派嘅人縱使佢哋收到1/10，但係佢哋係朽壞嘅人，佢哋係會有死嘅一日。
But in the other case, what's that? As in the case of Melchizedek. In the case of Melchizedek, the tithe was collected by one who is declared to be living.
It's in the case of
Oh, is, yeah. The other case is the case of Melchizedek, by one who's, right.
This is the case of Jesus.
Okay.
Living.
Jesus doesn't collect the tithe from us.
咁另外咧講緊嗰一個情況咧，就係收1/10嘅就係唔死個活着。
Now, I think that the second case here is not talking about Jesus because it says the tenth is collected by. And I don't think Jesus collects a tithe from us. Therefore, I would interpret this verse as being talking about Levitical priests compared to the priest Melchizedek.
咁咧喺呢個經文第8節裏邊所講嘅咧，嗰個收1/10咧就應該係講麥基洗德嘅。
But it's confusing because it says by the one who's declared to be living, and that sounds like Jesus.
咁咧，但係呢度咧就稍為可能有啲需要商確嘅地方咧，因為佢話佢仲活着喎，咁可能令人覺得係講緊耶穌。
This is one of these sort of difficulties in Hebrews where Melchizedek sounds like an immortal.
咁咧呢一度咧，可能亦都係希伯來書嘅一處比較上困難嘅地方啦，因為咧佢用咗麥基洗德咧嚟作咗一個模式，一個榜樣嘅。
Well, right, beginning without beginning of days or end of life, right? Verse 3. Without father, mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or life. Doesn't it sound like a person who lives forever?
咁因為咧喺第3節裏邊，佢咁樣介紹麥基洗德，話佢無父無母無族譜無生之始，無命之中係似與神嘅兒子相似。
And he's one who's declared to be living.
咁咧，所以啲人咧就會話佢係活着嘅。
I think he lives in Manhattan now. Yeah, I think so. We could, he's really old. He has to use a cane.
可能仲好老嘅，篤緊支拐杖。
No. This manner of expression, someone who has no record of genealogy could be considered to be living forever. because there's no record of his birth, there's no record of his death, but there's a record of this person. This is a way of expression in Hebrew, in the Hebrew language.
咁咧喺呢個希伯來人佢哋嘅文字上咧，佢哋喜歡咧用呢個咁咧嚟到形容，因為咧呢個麥基洗德咧就冇任何資料嘅，咁變咗咧就話佢係無父無母，即其實佢唔係真係無父無母，咁但係因為冇任何資料嘅情況之下咧，令到佢咧就攞咗佢愛嚟一個比喻，就好似主耶穌。
And it's in contrast to the Levitical priests whose genealogy was kept very, very carefully, because they had to be from the tribe of Levi to be a priest, so the genealogical records were kept very carefully for them.
咁咧，亦都係因為佢冇人知佢喺邊度嚟，佢冇族譜嘅情況之下咧，就猶太人咧未必接受到咧因為佢哋如果猶太人嘅祭司咧職任咧，你真係要攞出世紙嚟證明你係利未支派，咁你先至可以做呢個職任嘅。但係咧，而呢個所謂嘅撒冷王麥基洗德咧，係完全唔符合呢個條件嘅。
But Melchizedek didn't have those. He didn't have this genealogical record. However, he was a priest.
既然呢一個麥基洗德佢係冇呢一個證明佢唔係呢個利未嘅祭司，但係佢真係一個祭司，佢唔係從利未支派出。
I believe he was a regular guy who was born and died.
咁咧，我哋相信咧，麥基洗德只不過係一個人嚟嘅，咁佢都會有阿媽生，咁亦都好似我哋有一日咧會百年歸老。
But without a record of the beginning of his days or a record of the end of his life, so he's considered to be a priest forever.
咁只不過咧，因為我哋沒有記載究竟佢幾時出生，亦都冇記載喺幾時死亡嘅時候咧，我哋咧就攞咗佢嚟當一個象徵咧，就係佢係永遠為祭司。
As such, then, the writer can compare him to Jesus.
咁樣嚟到去介紹麥基洗德嘅時候咧，作者咧就可以將呢個麥基洗德同主耶穌咧嚟到相提並論啦。
Jesus really is a high priest who will not die.
咁但係在主耶穌嚟講咧，主耶穌就真正咧係一個大祭司，而佢亦都唔需要面對死亡嘅。
He won't die one day and be replaced by another high priest.
所謂唔會死亡就係佢唔會有一日死咗啦，跟住咧就有下一任嘅祭司嚟到頂上，唔會有咁嘅事情。
Now, you could even say, verse 9, you could even say that Levi, who collects the tenth at that time, in their day, paid the tenth through Abraham, because when Melchizedek met Abraham, Levi was still in the body of his ancestor.
第9節，並且可說那受1/10的利未，也是藉着亞伯拉罕納了1/10。
So the priests who collect the tenth from the Jewish people at the time of Jesus and before, they weren't even, their ancestor Levi was not even born yet. You could say he was still in Abraham's body. So you could say Levi himself paid a tithe to Melchizedek, which is just all backwards for what the Jewish people are used to. It's unexpected.
咁咧，我哋要稍為用我哋想像力啦嚇。咁咧，當耶穌嗰個時代咧，咁佢哋猶太人當然就係繼續係守緊律法啦。咁佢哋會納1/10俾呢個利未支派嘅祭司嘅。咁但係咧，如果我哋講翻亞伯拉罕嘅時代，亞伯拉罕係利未嘅祖先，利未都未出世，亞伯拉罕就已經納1/10俾呢一個麥基洗德。咁即是話咧，其實當利未咧就仍然喺亞伯拉罕嘅肚腹之中未出世嘅，係佢將來嘅子孫嚟嘅。但係佢已經咧係藉着呢個亞伯拉罕嚟到去納1/10俾呢個麥基洗德。
So what do we learn about Melchizedek from this passage?
咁咧呢一段經文話俾我聽，麥基洗德係咩咧？
He's the king of righteousness.
佢係仁義王，
He's the King of Peace.
佢係平安王，
He's greater than Abraham.
佢比亞伯拉罕位份更要高。
He blessed, well, he received a tithe from Abraham and he blessed Abraham.
因為咧佢係從亞伯拉罕得到嘅嘢嚟到去領受1/10，而且佢係位份高咧，佢祝福亞伯拉罕。
And he's declared to be a priest forever.
而且佢咧就係猶太人咧將佢稱為咧係一個永遠嘅祭司。
And that's 4 things we learn about Melchizedek from here. And Jesus is what we call the antitype of Melchizedek. Melchizedek was the type, and Jesus was the antitype of Melchizedek. So it's something like a comparison. Jesus was a type of Melchizedek. A comparison between the two is being made here.
咁先前咧，我哋講咗關於啲同呢個麥基洗德所有關嗰啲特徵啦，即係冇人有嘅，係佢先有嘅。咁而我哋將主耶穌同呢個麥基洗德一對比嘅時候咧，發覺咧主耶穌咧就好似一個麥基洗德嘅原型咁樣，即係好相似㗎佢哋地方。
And Jesus is like Melchizedek in those ways. Jesus is the King of righteousness.
咁我哋知道主耶穌就係仁義王，就係呢個仁義王。
He makes us right before God.
咁咧，佢喺上帝嘅面前咧，就係將我哋稱義啊。
We can't be righteous on our own.
因為我哋自己靠住自己咧，就不能喺上帝面前稱義
But
嘅。
through Jesus, we can be considered righteous by God.
咁咧，但係靠着主耶穌咧，我哋可以被上帝稱為義。
And this is a great little illustration from the Chinese language, the word righteous.
咁咧
The character righteous.
咁咧呢個咧就如果我哋睇翻中文嗰個字個義嗰個字。
The top part is made of the word that means lamb. The bottom part is made up of the word that means me.
咁嗰個中文個義字咧，上邊嗰部分咧就係一個羊字嚟嘅，下邊嗰部分咧係我。
The Lamb of God covering me
咁咧就係
makes me righteous.
咁咧就可以我哋解讀為咧就係上帝嘅羔羊咧，佢就係覆蓋住我咧，就令到我咧就可以稱義啦，成義。
Jesus is the King of peace.
主耶穌咧亦都係和平之君。
He gives us peace.
咁咧佢將平安帶俾我哋啦。
He makes peace between us and God.
佢咧就係一個作為一個調停咧，令作為喺神同人中間咧一個調停嘅作用，佢令到我哋互相和好啊。
When we were still enemies with God, Jesus died for us and he made peace.
當我們還作罪人嘅時候，當我們還敵擋上帝嘅時候咧，主耶穌咧為我哋捨身咧，嚟到將呢個平安咧就係帶到喺我哋之間。
Jesus is greater than Abraham.
主耶穌咧係比亞伯拉罕仲要大嘅。
And the greater blesses the lesser.
當然就係位份高嘅向位份低嘅
Compared
祝
to
福。
Jesus, we are the lesser, and he will bless us.
同主耶穌相比，我哋當然係位份低，所以主耶穌就會向我哋祝福。
He blesses us in many ways, but primarily with his grace and his love and his salvation. These are the blessings we have from Jesus.
咁當然啦，我哋可以從主耶穌咧裏邊得到各式各樣唔同嘅祝福，但係我哋最重要嘅祝福就係我哋嘅救恩啦，就係佢嘅愛啦。
And Jesus is greater than Abraham. We should give back to him too.
因為主耶穌比亞伯拉罕還要大，我哋都應該要去回報我哋嘅愛，佢對我哋嘅愛。
He is our priest now. He's the greatest priest, and we should give back to him too.
因為主耶穌就係永遠為祭司，佢就係我哋嘅祭司，所以我哋亦都 應該向佢奉上我哋
Well, I
嘅
think a good way to understand that is Romans 12:1. Make ourselves a living sacrifice.
咁咧，如果我記得咧，羅馬書第12章第1節咧嗰度講咧就話聖經教導咧，我哋要以我哋嘅生命，我哋嘅生命為祭嚟到獻上俾主耶穌。
And Jesus is a priest forever.
主耶穌咧就係永遠嘅祭司。
As long as we need Him, He will be there at God's right hand, speaking to God on our behalf, a merciful high priest.
咁無論我哋何時係需要得到幫助嘅時候，主耶穌永遠都係坐喺父神嘅右邊嚟到去為我哋祈求。
As we take our communion today, let's remember how Jesus gives us righteousness, peace, how He blesses us, how He will be there for us forever, and how we can give back to Him.
咁咧，當我哋陣間咧要去領聖餐嘅時候咧，讓我哋咧都去思想主耶穌佢點樣捨身使到我哋咧呢個本嚟唔係義人嘅人可以得稱為義。佢如何嘅愛我哋，如何嘅將仁義和平嚟到賜俾我哋，我哋又如何嘅可以向佢回報？